Ah, yes, Titanic. The film that taught a generation about romance, tragedy, and the fundamental physics of how many people can fit on a door. Spoilers, it's more than one. Get ready for the movie that made you cry, then made you yell at your screen about basic buoyancy. This is the 3-hour epic about a boat that famously couldn't finish its first trip. You know, for a movie called Titanic, it takes a surprisingly long time to get to the Titanicking. We open not in 1912, but in the glorious pixelated 90s, where an old lady is about to tell the longest back-in-my-day story ever recorded. Her audience? A team of deep-sea treasure hunters led by Bill Paxton, who's contractually obligated to look stressed in every movie he's in. They're searching for a giant diamond, but instead, they find a drawing of a girl. A drawing that somehow survived decades underwater perfectly preserved. Let's just call this plot armor, Exhibit A. Flashback to 1912. The magnificent Titanic is ready to set sail. They called it the Ship of Dreams, which, in hindsight, sounds a lot like a nightmare you can't wake up from. On board, we meet our high society squad. First, there's Rose DeWitt Bucketer. She's got everything a girl could want: money, fancy hats, and a soul-crushing fiancé she despises. She's so over her life, her main hobby is staring dramatically into the middle distance. And her fiancé? Cal Hockley. He's a charming gentleman, if your definition of charming is walking red flag with a trust fund. He's basically the human equivalent of a popped collar. But who's that down in steerage? It's Jack Dawson, a penniless artist who's so poor his most valuable possession is his charmingly floppy hair. He won his ticket in a poker game, which means this entire tragedy is technically the result of a really bad bluff. Jack and his buddy Fabrizio are thrilled. They're on the grandest ship in the world. They scream, "I'm the king of the world," from the bow, a line that will be repeated by every dude on a ferry for the next 100 years. Meanwhile, Rose is having a full-blown existential crisis and decides the best solution is to jump off the back of the boat. Because nothing says, "I want to live," like a swan dive into the freezing Atlantic. Luckily, Jack is there to stop her, not with a heartfelt speech, but with the threat of really cold water. It's super effective. As a thank you, Jack is invited to dinner with the first-class folks. This is where we learn the golden rule of high society. If you can't tell which fork is for the salad, just smile and hope no one notices you're a peasant. Jack shows Rose his art portfolio, which is mostly just sketches of sad-looking French women. Rose is captivated. She's never met a man who didn't own at least 3 factories. And now, for the moment you've all been waiting for. The scene that launched 1,000 parodies. "I'm flying, Jack," she says, while he holds her at the bow. It's romantic, I guess, if you ignore the hypothermia and the fact that they're basically recreating the ship's hood ornament. Their forbidden romance escalates quickly. He teaches her to spit like a real person. She lets him draw her wearing nothing but a giant, priceless diamond. A diamond she got from her fiancé. Ouch. This drawing, by the way, is the same one that will survive underwater for 84 years. Did he use a waterproof pencil? They run from Cal's bodyguard, who is apparently the only person on the entire ship doing his job. Their escape leads them to the steamy confines of a car in the cargo hold. You know what happens next. The handprint on the foggy window. A scene that aged about as well as dial-up internet. Suddenly, while our heroes are distracted, a lookout spots something. An iceberg, dead ahead. He rings the bell, but it's like he's trying to order a pizza. There's no urgency. The officers try to turn the massive ship on a dime. It's like trying to parallel park a skyscraper. The iceberg grazes the side and everyone's like, "Phew, that was close." Little do they know, the ship just got the world's worst paper cut. The ship's builder, Mr. Andrews, delivers the bad news. The math isn't good. The unsinkable ship is, in fact, sinking. He gives it an hour, maybe 2. And just like that, the world's most luxurious hotel becomes the world's most terrifying water slide. Chaos begins. The band famously plays on, a decision that's either incredibly brave or just proves they had a terrible agent. Cal, ever the gentleman, frames Jack for stealing the diamond. He gets Jack handcuffed to a pipe in a flooding room. Because if you're going to be evil, you might as well be cartoonishly evil. Rose, instead of getting on a lifeboat like a sensible person, decides to go rescue Jack. She finds an axe and, with the confidence of someone who has never swung an axe before, frees him on the first try. That's not love. That's a statistical miracle. The ship starts its dramatic downward tilt. This is where the movie becomes a full-on disaster parkour simulation. People are sliding down the deck, dodging falling furniture, and generally having a very, very bad time. Our heroes make their way to the stern, which is now pointing straight at the sky. They cling to the railing, along with hundreds of others, waiting for the inevitable. The ship groans, the lights flicker, and then it splits in half. because one sinking wasn't dramatic enough. The stern plunges into the icy water, taking everyone with it. What follows is a scene of pure, chilling chaos. Jack finds Rose and pulls her onto a floating piece of debris. A door, to be specific. A very spacious door. Jack hangs on in the freezing water. He tells Rose she'll die an old woman, warm in her bed. It's a beautiful, selfless speech. It's also where he gives up, like really fast. He didn't even try to get on the door. Just a little wiggle, Jack. Test the weight distribution. But no. He freezes, becoming a human popsicle, and sinks into the abyss. Rose, heartbroken, blows a whistle to get the attention of a returning lifeboat. She's saved. But at what cost? The cost of one perfectly good spot on a door. We flash forward to old Rose. She finishes her story. She reveals she had the diamond the whole time. She lived a full life just like Jack wanted. And to cap it all off, she walks to the back of the research vessel and chucks the multi-million-dollar diamond into the ocean. Why? Because reasons? So, what did we learn? First, unsinkable is just a fancy word for giant target. Second, always check the structural integrity of your floating debris before giving up. And third, if a stranger offers to draw you like one of his French girls, maybe just say no. If you enjoyed this cinematic shipwreck, hit that like button and subscribe for more roasts. Let us know in the comments which movie we should sink next. Thanks for watching. Ah, yes. Titanic. The film that taught a generation to cry, fall in love with Leonardo DiCaprio, and then immediately Google the physics of floating doors. You thought this was a romance? Think again. This is a 3-hour safety warning about why you should never take a cruise organized by people who say unsinkable with a straight face. Our story begins in 1996 with a treasure hunter so obsessed with finding a giant blue diamond, he probably has a Pinterest board dedicated to it. Instead of riches, he finds something even more valuable. A really old lady ready to tell a really long story. Get comfortable, folks. This flashback has a runtime. We're transported to 1912, aboard the grandest ship ever built, a floating hotel of hubris. Here we meet Rose, a high society teen whose biggest problem is that her fiancé is, well, Billy Zane. She's so over her privileged life, she decides the best solution is to dramatically lean over the back of the ship. Classic teenage angst. And who comes to her rescue? Jack Dawson, a charming artist so poor his pockets contain nothing but lint and lottery tickets. He won his ticket on this death cruise in a poker game, which is the 1912 equivalent of winning a free Fire Festival pass. He saves her, and suddenly they're inseparable. He teaches her to spit like a real person. She shows him her fancy dining room, and he draws her like one of his, well, you know. Their chemistry is electric, mostly because her fiancé Cal has the personality of a wet cardboard box. Cal, our resident villain, is so cartoonishly evil, you expect him to start tying Rose to railroad tracks. Their forbidden love blossoms with flying on the bow, dancing in third class, and a steamy encounter in a car that somehow made it onto the ship. It's all very romantic until you remember this entire ship is about to become an underwater museum. And right on cue, here comes the iceberg. Slow, majestic, and somehow faster than the ship's reaction time. Suddenly, it's chaos. The unsinkable ship starts doing the one thing it wasn't supposed to do. Sink. People are screaming, the band is playing their final gig, and Cal is running around being just the absolute worst. He even frames Jack for stealing the diamond. Because when a ship is sinking, the first priority is always petty revenge. Jack escapes his watery prison only to find Rose, and they navigate the vertical maze of a dying ship. And then, the moment we've all been waiting for. The door. There's Jack, freezing in the Arctic water. There's Rose, comfortably lounging on a door big enough for a family picnic. She says, "I'll never let go," and then promptly lets go. It's the most beautifully tragic and logistically frustrating scene in cinema history. So, what did we learn? First, if someone calls a ship unsinkable, just walk away. Second, true love means at least trying to share the floating debris. And finally, never underestimate the narrative power of an old lady with a lot of time on her hands. If you enjoyed this cinematic takedown, float on over to that subscribe button and give it a click. Let us know in the comments which movie we should roast next. Thanks for watching.